What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another amazing episode of Pod Scum. I'm your host, your bastard of ceremonies, Reckless Rex Ruger. That's the Freddie Mercury puppet. We got another kick-ass episode. My guest is here, and I know you guys love that. I love it. He's here. Let's get down and mix it up. This is where the cool kids come to chop it up. You know it, I know it, and we got another good one tonight. MEM, how are you, sir?
Hey, what's up?
I salute you. It's always great to get on here and chop it up with a. It's always great to get on here and chop it up with a legend.
All right.
And I'm honored to have you on here. I really am.
I don't hear you. Let me see if.
Is there a microphone icon at the bottom of your screen?
On. My mic is on. You hear me?
I can hear you.
All right.
Are you able to hear me?
I can get you up.
Bottom of your screen.
Settings.
Let me text him.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Let me get this up. That's weird.
Mike.
Yep, I got you.
You got me?
Yep.
All right. Good to have you on here, sir. I appreciate you doing this. Really, I do.
No worries.
Yeah, I think there's I was about to text you and say I think there's like an icon of a microphone down there at the bottom of the screen, which I thought might have been the problem, but
we're good.
Yeah, good to have you on here, man. Usually I like to kick these things off by kind of going back to the origins a little bit. When you got into music, man, was there a specific artist or an album or a song that really kind of jump-started it all for you?
Yeah, probably Zappa.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I was a kid. I was like, it was like late 70s, and Bobby Brown, I heard that on the radio. I was like, what the heck is that? I had no idea what he was talking about. Obviously, I was 12 or something.
Yeah.
And I liked the song. And then I went and got some money from my mom because I wanted to buy the record. So I was like, hey, can you give me some money? I want to check this out. So I went and got Shake Your Booty, and I was obsessed with that record. I had no idea what was going on, quite frankly, because I mean, if you're so young, you don't really understand what he's talking about,
right?
You know, but it was just fascinating, the artwork and everything. And then I just got progressively into, like, my dad was, when I was a kid, he was listening to jazz and Led Zeppelin and whatever not, right? And so I had that in my ear,
right?
But that was when I heard Zappa for the first time. It was so strange and it was so weird, and that's what started it, really. And then I just went down the rabbit hole of everything else. So I was just like, all right, there's other weird stuff out there. It has to be so.
And so your family was big on music. There was a lot of music in your household.
Yeah. So my dad was really into, like, I was born in Istanbul, Turkey, and my parents are from Istanbul, Turkey, and they saw Louis Armstrong live and stuff like that. So they were always into music. And like I said, when I was a child, my dad was bumping the first Led Zeppelin record, and like I had no idea what it was, but you know, back then I was like, wow, it just fed this notion of music, and then and then later on, I just completely lost it, you know. Like,
and then what? And then what was the connection? You know, how do you make the connection with, you know, extreme metal or like heavier music? What was the gateway? Right. What was the gateway? So, the gateway band there?
Yeah. So I had a tutor, who I went to see for, I don't know, English or whatever it was. I don't recall, or math. And he had a big record collection, and he knew that I was into music. And one day he pulled out Volume 4 from Sabbath.
Yep.
And I looked at the cover and I thought, that looks great. And he goes, yeah, I don't want to, you know, he's like, I'm done with this record. Do you want to have it? I was like, yeah. And I got that, and then it was game over after that. That was probably 1980 or so. And then I just went off the deep end from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for people that don't know, you know, that first EXUMER album comes out in 1986.
Yep.
And then the following one comes out in 1987, which you are not on that one, correct?
That's the only record I wasn't on. That I'm
Okay.
not, yeah.
And then after that, there's a very long hiatus. For people that might watch this or might go back after seeing this and dig into your discography. Can you elaborate a little bit on why the long hiatus?
Yeah. So I started the band in '85. Me and my buddy Ray, who's a guitar player. And then after we recorded Possessed by Fire, our first record, we just kind of like got in a spat. And then I was like, we're little kids. So I was like, oh, kiss my ass. I'm leaving the band.
Yeah.
Then 2 weeks later, we're back being friends. But then I was like, okay. And then Paul, who actually used to be our rhythm guitarist, he stepped in and said, well, if Mem isn't singing, if you want me to, I can play bass and sing until you guys figure it out. And at that point, I was like, all right, why don't you just sing on that record and, do that. And then we'll see. And at that point, also, I was drifting into like a lot of New York hardcore and just hardcore in general. And I visited New York for the first time in '87. And I was completely immersed in that scene. And I was like, you do EXUMER and, you do the Slayer thing, which was pretty dominant on the second EXUMER record, and then we'll figure out things from there. But in the meantime, back then it wasn't really great for a band who just came out to switch singers. Especially the first record was really well received, Possessed.
Yes.
And then when Rising came out, people thought they'd get more of Possessed by Fire, which is a pretty healthy mix of, I would say, Metallica, Exodus, Slayer, everything that we were listening at the time, right? But then new singer, and then way less of that mix, but way more of Slayer. And then people were just kind of like, cool, but not as cool. And then Paul, who was a military brat, his parents moved back to Hawaii. He's from Hawaii. And he was like, I can't stay in Germany. I got to go back to Hawaii with my parents. And then, so he moved back to the States. And then the band had a couple more vocalists and versions, but it never took off. And then they just kind of said, all right, we call it a day. Then Ray, Bernie, and I, who were like original members, we started like a hip hop metal thing in 1993. So, which is basically EXUMER, just doing completely different music,
right,
with a bunch of other people. And then we did that. So we always remained friends. And then I moved to the States to go to college and grad school eventually. And then I started dabbling in stuff around here. Had my own, like an old school thrash metal band called Sun Descends. And then at some point, I was like, screw all this. Why don't we kind of get the band back together? I mean, it sounds stupid, right? It sounds super cliche, but that's what really essentially happened. And at that point, technology was evolved enough that we could do something where I'm here in the States and the other guys are in Germany, and we, work as a band. We still write music together, but like when we write for a record, we will get together for 2 or 3 extended periods of time where I go over there and we rehearse the songs and whatnot. But Ray will send me a riff and he'll ask me, hey, do you like this? Can you sing on that? I'll listen to the riff. There'll be like a generic drum beat underneath it. And then I'll be like, all right, this we can work with, or this we can't, or let's kind of flesh this out when we're together. So that the technology in 2008, 2009 was advanced enough that we could do that. And then this is how we got this whole thing back together. And that's where that whole period was. Basically, band broke up. We got into different music. I moved to the States. I remained here. And then technology caught up to where we can have a bicontinental band.
Yeah. And when you guys do get together to write music, you know, the current lineup of EXUMER, which you just put out your last album in 2019, when you guys do get together, what typically is the creative process like? Because you know, a couple of you guys have been there since the beginning. Does someone come in with the lion's share of the ideas? Is it very collaborative and democratic? Absolutely.
Ray will have a good amount of riffs, but then like Mark, the other guitar player, he's a guitar teacher. He's super virtuoso guitarist. So he'll complement whatever is lacking on Ray's end. At the end of the day, it's like a lot of bands. I do all the lyrics, I do all the vocals and whatnot, and Ray's pretty much the musical director and the whole equation. But when we put music together, everybody can throw in their 2 cents, and we'll take, like, if Mark has a good riff, we'll take the riff.
Right.
It don't matter. You know, it doesn't matter where it comes from. The only thing that I don't really get a whole lot of, I mean, I don't sing anybody else's lyrics, because the way I write records is every song is somewhat connected lyrically, and there's a concept around each of the records. So I can't have anybody write other stuff for me. Yeah. And the vocal lines, 99% I do, and somebody will say, hey, why don't you try to sing like this? And I'll try it out. If it sounds good, I'll do it. Right. But again, like, I really sit down with pretty much the song complete, and then I'll finish the lyrics, finish the vocals at home, and then I'll bring it to the studio. At that point in the process, everything is pretty much done. So when we demo our songs, there's very little change from the demo to what you will hear on the record. There'll be, like, you know, there'll be flavors, additional flavors here and there, but it's the basic tracks, everything from the vocals to the riffs and the arrangements, they're pretty much set. It's when we're in the studio, maybe the producer that we're working with at the time will say, hey, can you play this riff slightly like this, or why don't you stretch the vocal line here, or whatever. Yeah. So it really is tweaking around the edges, opposed to, you know, coming up with shit in the studio. First of all, we don't have the time to do that.
Sure.
But also, it's not, you know, we're not like, it's thrash, right? And it doesn't have as much room to breathe as other genres.
Right. And I love the fact that that a couple times in your explanation, you used sequencing and arranging. The more I talk to musicians on here, I realize, man, that really, you used to hear that term a lot. Oh, it's a concept album. It's a concept album. But really, it seems like artists really intend almost every album to be conceptual in nature. The sequencing and the arrangement and the flow of an album is I'm starting to learn, is much more important than sometimes it's given credit for.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what I really mean by a concept. All the songs are kind of like connected in a way where the overall theme is about similar ideas, right?
Right.
So like our last record, Hostile Defiance, was based around mental illness.
Yep.
Right? So every song has lyrically something around that theme. But then when we sequence it, it's definitely it has to flow. So that when you hear the songs one after the other, there's no resolution. It's not like Operation Mindcrime or anything, you know.
Right.
No Queensryche, you know. Yeah, it's not Rush 2112. Like it's not that, but it is conceptually it holds. Like if somebody sits me down and says, "What is the record about? What is this song about? Or what is that song about? And why does it appear on the record as track 5?" I can tell you why.
Right.
Concept around it. That's why I'm saying it has to come out of my head. I mean, I have to think about it, and I can't have 15 people chiming in, because then it's just going to get lost.
Now, why does this album, Hostile Defiance, just to touch on what you said, why an album about mental illness?
I'm a clinical social worker.
Okay.
And I work in psychiatry for the past 22 years.
Okay.
Uh,
Makes sense.
some form of another. And when we were writing that record, I felt like it was important to write something that I felt like, as when I started in the field, early 2000s, there was still a lot of stigma around the issue.
Oh, I
Now,
think there still is. So
there's
to a degree. Yeah.
right. And I feel now, though, I mean, especially then also 5 years ago, I felt like it would be good for us to talk about something that to me is as like let's say you have a heart condition. What do? You take medication, right?
Right.
Like, don't want to die, yes, I assume. So
Right.
it's just, yeah, you go to the doctor, he prescribes you meds, and you live your life. And to me, I view mental illness the same way. You have a chemical imbalance, you go get treatment for it, whether it's therapy and psychotropic meds, or one or the other, or a combination thereof, and you live your life. But there's still a lot of stigma attached to it, and I wanted to normalize it, and I wanted to talk about it. And I was like, because I worked with different populations. I worked with the mentally ill homeless on the Upper West Side in Manhattan. I worked with kids, families, people on the spectrum, everything, right? So to me, it was important to talk about something that's not some fantasy. Like, it's not 1984 where, you talk about dragons and swords.
Wizards, yeah. Right.
Great, it's great in its way, but it's not really applicable to me. Like, I can't. So I figured that was a good. And now the next record, which will hopefully be released next year, we're done writing it. We just have to record it. That will have an overall theme about all the things that we went through, coming from my perspective, going through COVID, going through crazy elections, going through all these things. And it's not coming from a left or right perspective. It's just going to talk about what I see.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, you can, because I don't want to give, it's not political commentary to
Right.
what anybody prefers. I just want to talk about what we went through, or from my perspective. And then, you can think about it, whatever you want to think about it, you do.
Almost like the everyman slant, kind of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, this is what happened. There's one overarching thing that I do have an opinion on, which is the interference of government in everyday life.
Yes.
I do have an opinion on that, but it's not left or right. It's just, and the reason why I wrote about it was in 2023, the Branch Davidian thing that turned 30 years old. And that to me was a prime example of how the government portrayed something that was not what it was that they said it was.
Great point. Yep. I know. Yeah.
And that was the first time it was glaring. Like, once you start digging into what happened there,
yes,
it's freaking crazy.
Right. You start to realize, like, look, this was a religion, and yes, there were a lot of guns on there, but they never made any mention that they had any intentions of doing anything.
Exactly. And I'm not pro-religion or against. I don't care.
Right.
For me, I immigrated to this country. I became a citizen because I believe in you do you.
Yeah, absolutely.
To me, I like, if you want to have 50,000 guns, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Now, if you start shooting people up with no reason,
right,
then we
have
a problem.
Yeah, that's a problem.
We can talk about that, right?
Yeah.
So to me, the values of this country are what I aspire to. That's what I believe in. Yeah. But I don't believe in, like, distortions of that.
Yeah.
And so that's one theme of the next record that's one set theme that I took from that experience. And I listened to, when that event turned 30, there was a lot of stuff that I heard on the radio. A lot of people that I followed were discussing it. And that was one of the things that I wanted to discuss on this record and write about on this record. But that's just an example of how I think about when we write music.
Yeah.
I
was
mean,
very fascinated by that whole thing too, because I'm 51 years old, so I remember that very vividly too, and it does it does seem like we just had to go in there and we had to put a label on that and we had to interfere, like, just because. And you know what? I mean, you can say what you want about these cult leaders, but if somebody out there buys into what they're saying, they have the right to espouse that, and people have the right to follow them.
Free country, right?
It's a free country. At least you would think. I mean, it's perceived to be anyway.
I mean, that's the idea, right? And then to me, when that whole thing got so twisted, I'm like, wait a second. They didn't go out and try to do any of these things that these people, like, the government is saying. And you basically just went in there and shot up a bunch of women and children.
Yeah, smoked them out, set fire to the place. Yeah, unbelievable.
It's crazy. And now that made me think, so if they can do that, what else can they do?
Right. They can just point at this person and say, we know there's a lot of guns in that place and we don't like it and we don't know what's going on, so we're just going to go fucking in there and just steamroll them. Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, this is one of the scariest things that I can think of.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's part of what I discuss in my records, and I try to, be as real, and it's not fantasy.
Well, that's fascinating, because you do get a lot of that, and I'm not trying to impugn what any other thrash bands do if they want to sing about, like, fantasy worlds and all that stuff. Sure. But it is nice here in 2024, though, to see that extreme metal it is dealing with some of this stuff, and it is nice that we can talk about mental health and mental illness and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And it doesn't got to be feel like it's such a taboo subject. I work in healthcare, like my day job. I work as an LPN. I'm in a nursing home, so I'm more dealing with geriatrics or whatever, man. But they go through a lot of the same stuff too, and I see a lot of dementia and sundowning and a lot of mental stuff there as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I think people don't talk about that, right?
Yeah,
because in our culture, everything is TikTok clip, 20 seconds. Yeah. Everybody's hot, everybody's young, but life is not that.
It's not, right?
It's not, right. And nobody wants to talk about, unless you have somebody who's elderly who does something extraordinary, then you talk about somebody who's older. But outside of that, like, I was writing something today, and it was about my son who'll be 6, and I was writing him something to him, and I said, I really like that you and your grandmother have such a strong relationship, because it teaches him a lot about growing older, learning how to engage with elderly people.
Yeah.
Like, all these different things that are so important. And nobody talks about this.
You're right.
Like, everybody's like, yo, everybody's hot, everybody's 20 years old and
viral. Yeah.
And, dude, that's so not life.
I know.
It's so ridiculous. So to me, like, when you say that, those are real things.
Yeah.
And we all have an expiration date. So if you think you can keep this up, whatever you're doing, it's going to end. So it's good you don't have to think about it every 2 seconds, but you could be, or you're like, I don't know, when my parents passed away at some point, you never think that your parents are going to pass away one day.
Right. Right. I dealt with that when my father died, because then I started to think, that puts me in the on deck circle now. I'm up next now, like.
So these are real issues. So if you can pretend it's not real, or you can live a life where you're like, pretending it's all, Mickey Mouse, and it's Instagram and it's whatever, but really it's not. And then it's good to be, besides all the fun that we can have. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer whatsoever, but I just want to be real about things. And when you say that to me, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And those are aspects of life. Just have to, you don't even have to live it, or you don't even have to dabble in it. Just accept it for what it is and then just move on.
Right.
Don't pretend it's not real.
Right. Well, in this culture, there's not really a lot of value necessarily, and I see it on a daily basis. There's not a lot of value necessarily put on our elderly. And these are people that lived through world wars and Great Depressions and served in the military. And then just to have them reduced to just, a pile of flesh that sits in a wheelchair all day long and just like waits to die is really kind of sad,
And the thing is, everyone has a story. Everyone has something to say. And everyone has a certain amount of wisdom. I don't care if even we're talking now, right? I'll be 57 next month. No, in 2 months.
Yeah.
November, December. Yeah, in January. Beginning of January, 2 months. So I have lived a certain amount of time on this planet. And even if it's when we just talk about music, right? I can tell you about what was going on in the 1980s because I lived it.
Right.
Just imagine what that person who lived through Vietnam can tell you. Stuff, or even further than that, Korean War, any kind of war, anything that was, because right now you have kids who don't know much about 9/11, but I remember it quite vividly because I was on Chambers Street that morning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So everybody has a certain amount of wisdom. And I think it's important to hear these folks and hear people, what they have to say, because it's important that you understand, or that we understand that they have a story. And it could be, if anything else, if nothing else, it can be informational, but it can also be kind of important in your own life for whatever reason.
Oh, sure. I mean, a lot of it can even be cautionary. I mean, you see a lot of people who say, hey, look, I'm here and I'm all fucked up and I'm in here because of years of smoking, or years of not being kind to my body, or if you don't want to end up here, don't do these things.
Absolutely.
There's a learning process to all of it, and you don't always see it. I noticed the demographic in nursing homes, and I'm not saying everybody is necessarily in a position, to take their loved ones in. There are people that need 24-hour care, and you just can't do it. But you don't see other cultures in record numbers putting their parents in nursing homes.
No, and
a lot of cultures don't do it at all.
No, and there's good reason for it, right? You like I said, I enjoy, I'm gonna, if my mother-in-law becomes impaired to a degree where she needs to be around us and she can't be in her own house, we'll just buy a bigger house, and then we'll make adjustments, and we'll get a nurse to come there. That's what our plan is, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how we think. And then when it's time for her to go, then she goes. But until then, she's going to be around us.
Yeah.
Right now, she's perfectly fine, and she's got her own house, and everything is working. But maybe 15, 20 years from now, it's not. So
it changes. Yeah.
It will change, and then we'll sell this house and buy a house that can accommodate another person.
Yeah.
And that's
let me ask you about getting back to the music here for a minute. Now, we obviously, you guys initially stemmed or started over in Germany, right? Now we've obviously seen the Teutonic Big Four. Like we've seen some German bands get colossally big. When you look back at the hiatus that EXUMER took, did you ever look at bands like Destruction and Sodom and Creator and Tankard and think, God, man, if we would have kept our foot on the gas, we might have been one of those bands. Do you have any regrets like that, or is it probably healthier not to think that way? Probably.
So yes and no. So, if my trajectory in life was supposed to be a professional musician, I probably would have done that, and I wouldn't have left the band, and I wouldn't have toyed with it as we did when we were kids.
Yeah.
And yes, obviously, sometimes it stings a little because, we have. I've known all the guys that you just mentioned, I've known them for a long time personally.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I walk into any of their shows and it's like like we're kids back in the 80s, except they made a living off of
Right.
it, and you know, and I didn't. On the flip side of that, I know who is making what kind of money, and the lifestyle that I chose eventually, or I am accustomed to now, is something that I I cherish very much, and I cannot afford it by being in one of those bands.
You don't know that you would have achieved it. Right.
No, and the reality is the only person I know that makes that type of money that you're looking at, that where you're really comfortable, is there's one person out of all the bands you mentioned. All the other ones, they're grinding.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, that's the, you know, yeah. And then most folks don't have a plan B. I just happen to fall into plan B.
Yeah.
Most people have plan A and then just, but yeah, obviously when I go see Creator and, you know, I go and hang out, whatever, and then they play the show and it's freaking 1,300 people and, you know, they're here and, or they're opening up for Merciful Fate in Brooklyn. I'm like, damn, you know, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But whatever. They're in a bus. I just did a 2.5 week tour through Europe with Hyrax, and I was in a bus. I mean,
Right.
smaller bus,
Right.
but bus is bus. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
They played Wacken, I played Wacken. They played whatever Brutal Assault, I played Brutal Assault.
Right.
Smaller scale in the certain sense of I play in the afternoon, they play in the evening. Same shit though. You know what I mean?
Playing is playing. Right.
Just
Right.
I play the same shows. People come to me. I do meet and greets. They do meet and greets. Like it's the same thing. It's just, you know, they do it every weekend, all the time, and I do it in spurts on very specific periods.
I'm
And
glad you brought up touring, though. I'm glad you brought up touring because as you get older in the business, and I know, again, me being 51 years old, you know, I have a day job that I go to when I come home at night. It doesn't involve any traveling. But I know as I've gotten older, I can feel myself becoming more of a homebody, more tethered and attached, like to family life and the creature comforts that I have here. Do you still like the nomadic existence of touring?
I like it a lot because I don't do it all the time.
Right.
And we do it very, very specifically. We go play festivals. We do tours of 2-3 weeks. It's never like, oh, let me grind for 3 months. I'm not doing that.
Right. So a couple of weeks, it seems to be a comfortable itinerary.
Perfectly.
Yeah.
You know, and a week, 10 days here, and we do it like spread out. And so it never becomes like, it becomes like I don't do a lot of boys' nights out.
Right.
That's my boys' night out.
Right. Right.
Except it's 10 days in a row where
Right.
my homies here, they go every weekend. I don't
Right.
do that. I stay here. I stay at home. And then when it's time to go hit the road, I'll tell my wife, all right, it's boys' night out. And that's what I do.
Right.
And except I don't get pissed drunk because I got to play. And that's my fun. So that's what I do with the boys. That's it. And
Yeah.
so it's a lot more organized and it's a lot, I mean, it's very intense. It's the same intensity. And I think it's even more intense because, you know, for instance, on this past tour, we played with Exodus, right? And we played with them in London and, you know, we talked and whatnot. And then, you know, they just kept going. Like it just keeps on going. And I'm like, you can't keep up. Like when we go out there, we go balls out for 2.5 weeks.
Right.
Every night is just, you know, going nuts. You can't do that for 2 or 3 months. First of all, I did 12 nights in a row singing. I was pretty much like, dude, I'm good. Here, right. Yeah. So
that's pushing the envelope. Yeah.
I'm like, I'm good. Another 2 or 3 nights, I would have been like, I'm toast. So, 12 nights in a row, that's my limit. But like, and so I talked to Steve from Exodus and he goes, yeah, I do 12 or 13 nights, but then I'm done too. And then he goes, yeah, but then I have another month or two to go. And I'm like,
Right.
that's like,
Yeah.
that's a nightmare to me, you know?
Right,
Like,
right. Because he's probably talking about 12 or 13 in a row and then maybe a night or two off and then right back to it.
yeah.
You know, yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I don't want that life. I don't,
Yeah.
and I also think when people come to our shows and I mean, the reactions are very similar. They're like, dude, this was intense. This was like, da da da. You can't deliver that intensity over months and months and months. Not
No,
at
you
50.
burn out. Yeah, yeah. That's
Like,
true.
when you're in your 20s, yeah, nothing
Yeah.
is a problem. When you're in your late 50s,
I got mornings where I can barely summon up the intensity to swing my legs over the side of the bed and get up. sometimes that's as intense as it gets for me in a day.
There you go.
That's not always even easy. But so how has your physical health though held up? Because you do extreme metal, as you say, you are out there giving it 110%. You know, any nagging injuries, or have you held up pretty well? Yeah.
No, I held up pretty well. I pretty much work out every day.
How about voice care? I mean, because you do that kind of music, are you anybody that ascribes to a specific routine?
I kind of like warm up before the show. That's pretty much what I do. So what happens is obviously the first 2 or 3 nights, your voice is at a peak.
Yeah.
And then it just goes down and then it levels out, at least with me.
Yeah.
And then I don't get hoarse or I don't like, it just stays the same. And that's why I don't drink a whole lot of alcohol. And especially when we're on tour, and I try to get as much sleep as possible. And I just kind of like, stay focused on what we have to do on a nightly basis. So all these fantasies that people might have being out on the road. Yeah, don't get me wrong, we have a lot of fun, but it's not 1985 and we're in Motley Crue and
Right.
you know,
Hedonism all over the place. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
pretty boring actually. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's just not that. It's just not that. And I mean, that was even happening in the 80s. I don't think bands do that anymore. That's, it's a thing from the past, really.
Yeah. Now, do you like the advent of technology? Because technology has become a big part of the music industry now, as far as like being a promotional tool and advertising. It seems like now every band has got to have the Instagram page and the Facebook page, and you know, as you said, it's not the 80s or the 90s anymore. I've talked to a lot of people on here, and it is a polarizing topic. You know, there are a lot of artists who realize how powerful of a marketing tool it is. But it also kind of destroys like some of the mystery, the air of mystery of some of our artists too. Like, where do you stand on technology?
So I'm a realist, so I know it's part of the gig now.
Yeah.
What we have to do. But what you just said about the mystery and the mystique, that's gone.
Yeah.
That's fucking gone.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, I remember when I bought Welcome to Hell, when I bought it like the first or second week of when it dropped, late 1981, I think it was. And I was enamored with that artwork. I was like, man, this looks freaking amazing. And then I turned the record, and there's those 3 guys on the beach, and I think Kronos is having like an axe. I'm like,
yeah,
what are these people?
Yes, I get what you're saying 100%. Yeah.
And then black metal comes out, and that whole concept now is pushed to the 100th degree. And I'm like, holy shit, the goat in the front just got more evil.
Yeah.
The pictures in the back are just completely out of control.
Yeah.
I remember putting that album cover up every day, leaving to school. And then when I came back, and the first thing I saw was that goat looking at me when I opened the door.
Yeah.
That's what was happening. That shit is gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's none of that.
Yeah.
Now everybody has an update of like, oh, we're on the bus now, and 2 seconds later it's the greet starts, and like we didn't have any. I didn't even like. I mean, I eventually met Venom in '84, and then many times subsequently, but nobody knew how how they were like and what they were thinking and da da da.
Right.
And not until I was like, I mean, from the time I was 14 until I was 17, I was thinking about bands. Or like, let me give you remember Surth Ungle?
Yes. Oh yeah, of course.
I thought they were a big band. And then many, many moons later, after I met Tim, I was like, dude, when I was a kid and I got Frosted Fire and on those, the artwork and the pictures in the band on the back of the sleeve, I thought you guys were like a huge band. That's how it came across to me.
Right.
I thought, oh, they just don't tour in Europe. But
Yeah.
they're huge in the States. And they're not. They weren't anything.
Right.
But the mystique around it was just like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, and kick ass, like just, you have to, you kind of fantasized about what it is that they really trying to come across.
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember having that feeling buying thrash albums or death metal albums, and even bands that were like, on the other side of the world. You know what I mean? Like bands that came from Germany or Swedish death metal bands. You would look at the back and you would just see guys, and they always took those pictures out in the woods somewhere with hair in their face, and you would just be like, "Fuck, who are the guys on this fucking record? They're terrifying." Yep.
That's all gone.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the only sad thing about it, and I really miss it, because you can't make it anymore. You can't fabricate it, and you can't even assume any of it anymore. It's just everything is out there, out in the open, every minute. Like, hey, if somebody's on tour, you got access immediately. Da 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 da. And even if you try to subscribe to some sort of mystery or mystique, it's just not. I don't even try. Like when we play shows, depending on what the club size is or whatnot, after a while, I'll just hang out.
Yeah.
Because everybody knows how I look like. Yeah. Most people have seen me doing one of these things that we're doing.
Right.
I talk about, I'm a clinical social worker. Like, there's nothing like, people go on Instagram, they see me spinning records.
Yeah, you're an open book at this point.
Who am I pretending?
Right.
And the same goes for pretty much everyone.
Yeah.
Because people back when we were kids, we had to imagine how these artists' lives were. But now you kind of like know how these people's lives are. It's like everybody else's life.
Right.
There's nothing to it. And you're like, yeah, he just plays in the band and he tours the world, whatever the fuck. It doesn't matter. None of this matters. And that's the sad thing about it. And I think, I see it with my 6-year-old, he loves, like, he attaches music to ideas, right? So he loves dinosaurs. I introduced him to Godzilla from Blue Oyster Cult. Yeah. That's one of his favorite songs.
Yeah.
Because he thinks it, and then I said, oh, look, this is Godzilla. It's a dinosaur. Da da da. So he makes the association with that. But then the next minute, he'll listen to some da 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 on the on Alexa, and I'm like, what the heck is this? And it's all the same to him.
Right.
Back when I was a kid, I was seeking out things that were more mysterious. Like, I grew up with music on the radio like everybody else.
Yep.
But that was like, it's cool. It's on the radio. I liked it, but I didn't think much of it because it was on the radio. But the things that were like I said, Volume 4 from Sabbath, that wasn't on the radio.
Right. Yeah, absolutely not.
That was a record.
You had to seek that out. Yeah.
I had to seek that out. I wanted more of that.
Yeah.
And so, it's just different now,
And what about when you see bands, like, you make a good point, like, it seems like nowadays when people are coming to shows, and this infuriates me to a degree, because it's not like they're pulling out their phones at a show and they want to just record a snippet of their favorite song as a memory. It seems like a lot of people are coming home now and they're putting it up on YouTube and they're trying to almost play like armchair music critic. You know what I mean? Everyone's trying to catch you or try to say that you don't have the chops anymore like you did 30 years ago, which is just a lazy, irresponsible comparison. I don't know anybody that can do what they did 30 years ago. But what about these legendary bands, like you brought up a Motley Crue earlier, or like a Kiss? When you go to see, from a fan standpoint, when you go to see these bands play, you know, and I'm not a musician myself, but do you like when they bolster up their sound with backing tracks and all this stuff? Or do you think if a band can't cut it anymore, they should just call it a day?
So to me, it's twofold, right? It depends. Like if you are in Kiss and that's a production band.
Agreed.
So it's kind of irrelevant whether they use vocal tracks or not.
Right.
It was a production in 1977.
It's more the spectacle.
It's the spectacle. So whatever makes that band comfortable, that's fine.
Yeah.
And because that's what you're paying for, right? You're going there to see a bunch of fireworks and the dude spitting blood.
Yeah.
And who gives a shit if Stanley uses a vocal track or not?
Right.
Doesn't matter.
Right.
Like that's not what you. Now, if you go see a band that's really blood and guts and like almost punk rock, and they still have it, then they have it. But if they don't have it, maybe it's a good. At some point, you want to realize either you work your set around that, right? You play songs that you can actually deliver, or you kind of think, all right, you know, I got X amount more years and then I'm gonna call it a day, because it's just like I'll give you a good example. When I was coming up, I was listening to a lot of hardcore, right? A lot of straight edge stuff, a lot of like, right, New York based.
Love it.
Right.
Yeah.
I just watched the other day, I watched Youth of Today. There's a song, No More, I think it's called. It's about that. It's about, you know, they had a clip out for that one. Everybody's like barely 18 years old, and the energy is just out of control.
Yeah.
Right? Now Ray and them, they're just, you know, our age.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing.
Yeah.
Now I grant it, if you want to continue doing that, that's cool. But even the name of the band's called Youth of Today.
Right.
Like when you go out on stage and you're like 55 and you're singing about straight edge,
yeah.
It doesn't have the same kind of effect.
Right.
So that's when I think, all right, maybe you do something else, or you really want to see if it works. If it doesn't work, then, you know, you call it a day. It is sad to see, and, you know, you got bands that just play regular rock. You can play that, like the Stones can play until they're dead.
Oh, yeah.
It's blues. It's basically blues.
Right.
So it doesn't matter. What is he gonna? He's not doing backflips there. So,
right. Right.
Yeah, he is gonna fall off the stage, and that will be it. But if you are in extreme music, there is a certain amount of chops that you have to still have to deliver what you're trying to convey. And if you can't do that, you know, whether it's because of stamina, health, whatever, you know, when Paul Di'Anno died this week, it broke my heart.
Crushing.
You know, but the guy was just holding on by a thread.
Yeah.
And not since last week. I mean, that's been going on for years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, you know, I wish he would have stopped all this and would have just taken care of himself.
Yeah.
Opposed to, you know, go on stage in a wheelchair, and like, it's just, maybe you could have prolonged his life. I don't know. Because I have the memories as a Maiden fan. To me, the first two Maiden records are it.
Yeah.
I bought Iron Maiden when it came out. I bought Killers. I remember going to the record store and picking it up. I mean, still have that image in my head. It's in here.
Yeah.
So to me, Di'Anno will be always that guy. So it doesn't matter. Like, if I don't need to see him.
Right.
I already have him in here. He's that guy.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So go take care of yourself. You don't have
Yeah.
to prove nothing to me. Now, I understand you do it for the love of it, and that's what you do. But, you know, I wish he would have taken care of himself, other than, you know, go on stage for 20 drunk people and just kind of like sing Iron Maiden songs with, you know, some people that really don't have anything to do with Iron Maiden.
It's not the way you want to remember them. Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, like that. So yeah, that was a long answer, but that to me pretty much sums it up. If the product that you are selling still is in alignment of what the product used to be, then go ahead, do what you do. And if it doesn't, you should see if you can alter it in a way where it's still enjoyable. Because nobody wants to see people who can't, like, you have a certain sound in your head, and if it's not approximately that sound, it's gonna start sucking.
Yeah, and then physically, you almost turn yourself into a caricature too at that point.
Absolutely.
You know.
I always tell my wife, I'm like, this thing is not going to go on forever, and there is an expiration date, and I can see the expiration date.
Yeah.
I'm just physically still in good shape, and I can do what we are doing, but I see another 8 years, 10 years, that's it, and then I'll call it a day. I don't want to.
And because you are down in New York City, as you mentioned before, and I'm in upstate New York myself, in my opinion, man, the mecca of hardcore music. I know other countries have great hardcore, but the New York hardcore scene, legendary, man, top notch. Now, in all your years of being there, I know you've always done like the thrash music thing, and maybe you have done this, I don't know, but did you ever flirt with a hardcore project yourself?
I had a crossover thing called Phobic Instinct in 1988, 89. That was in Germany. That was the band that I did after. So I came here in 87, stayed 87, 88. Then went back to Germany, and I started that band with the intent of having a more hardcore type of sound, even if it's only lyrically. Like, I was just like, because I remember, getting into hip hop too at the same time. I was like, Public Enemy was huge when I was here. Like, in 88, it was like.
Oh yeah, I certainly don't want to knock the impact that of New York hip hop too. That's legendary in its own right as well.
So to me, those two things kind of go almost hand in hand.
Yeah,
and so especially the harder stuff, that was like, it did the same. It had the same impact on me as a musician, and it was just so fresh, and it's just. And yeah, so that was the only thing. We recorded a record, but it never got released. The label shelved it, and then somebody from Puerto Rico put it out on CD in 2008. So it's out there, but it's like very raw crossover type of thrash hardcore.
Yeah.
Music, yeah.
I mean, for me, I've got the shirt on. I put Agnostic Front on a very high pedestal.
That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, they are the kings. And I know it's a subjective topic. There are people that I've had on here that say that The Age of Quarrel by the Cro-Mags is the absolute and most amazing hardcore album. You got your Sick of It All fans. It's a polarizing topic, man. But for me, I always kind of have Agnostic Front. Like,
there's none of those bands would exist without Stigma.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
That's your answer.
Yeah.
I mean, and when I moved over here and I immigrated, eventually, like in the late 90s, I actually started meeting a lot of hardcore people.
Yeah. The best community, the best.
And
I've had a lot of them on here. They're just the best.
And so, anyone who's anyone will tell you the same thing. No Stigma, no hardcore.
Yeah. And he lives it and breathes it all the time too. I mean, he's got a lot of energy for a guy in his mid-60s. I mean, he's boundless. Yeah.
I mean,
still out there touring. He just wrote a goddamn book, for fuck's sake.
Book is crazy.
Yeah, he's everywhere.
Yeah. So to me, that's your answer. Now, is The Age of Quarrel one of the most pivotal records of that genre? No doubt.
Landmark. Yeah.
I mean, 100%. But so is, I don't know, even Bad Brains, or like, that's DC, but there are many of those. But like when I remember going to CBGB's Canteen in 87 and picking up Liberty and Justice.
Oh man.
And it was like,
and And believe it or not, man, I've had a couple of the guys from Agnostic Front on here. You know, a lot of times that's a polarizing album because that's when they got into their own little bit of a crossover sound.
It was so, to me, like when Cause for Alarm was the predecessor to Liberty and Justice.
Yeah. Cause for Alarm is the album I'm thinking of where they really got crossover. Yeah.
But then they pushed the boundaries of that, I thought, on Liberty and Justice even further.
Yeah.
Because it was just slicker. The production was slicker. The playing was slicker. Everything was just bam. And that was a great record. So I remember going to the records. I mean, they had the Canteen. Man, the Lower East Side was a war zone in the late 80s.
Oh, yeah. I've talked to other hardcore guys on here before, and I always ask them, you know, is that hardcore ethos, you know, because of the world we're in now? You know, I know there's still bands doing hardcore music, but that ethos and that DIY attitude, man, that could only come from those bands in that time on the Lower East Side. And you know, it's time-stamped right there at that time in New York City. You know, I don't know that these kids, and I'm not trying to knock any of the younger hardcore bands, man, but I don't know that they can have that ethos because they're in an easier world right now, you know?
It was just, there was just nothing there. It was just.
I know, like you see those pictures of the old A7 club, and it looks like it's in the middle of a war zone. Yeah.
I mean, it's just, there was, you know, now it's full of sushi joints and
right.
rollers. You know, there was none of that. You know,
right? Like they had to fight their way in and fight their way out.
I mean, it was just different, and like I even was scared.
Sure.
I was 18, 19. I'm like, holy fuck! And it's the first time I'm coming from Germany, and I'm in the Lower East Side. I'm like,
right. I know.
Really uncomfortable.
I know. And these guys are spilling out of these clubs at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning.
I mean, you know? It was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, you know, for a teenager, like an adolescent kid, I'm like in my late adolescence, and I'm like, I mean, I was a hardcore. I mean, I was a metal guy, thrasher, into hardcore, so I wasn't afraid, but it was not like, oh yeah, cool, no problem.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You know, like you're walking down here. I live on Long Island. Like you're walking in Massapequa at 2 a.m.
Right. Feel a little better about your chances.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just a different time, and like it's all good though.
And now, speaking from a musical fan standpoint, you know, because I know that you know, doing the podcast has helped me because I do get a little bit of a charge from following the algorithm on my streaming platform and trying to discover new music. Like, oh, you know, if you like the sound of this, try this. And it is nice having younger bands on here and giving them a platform, and you know, even some sets of eyeballs and getting a couple new fans, I know helps bands greatly nowadays. But for a while, I was kind of like that stodgy old fuck that when I was going to listen to music around the house, I would fall back on my old favorites. Are you able to find new music that excites you, or when you're listening from a fan standpoint, do you kind of fall back on your old favorites?
So
is there anything new out there that excites you at all?
So I listen to a lot of genres that I don't play.
Okay, that makes sense.
So for a long time, I was listening to a lot of, I still do like a lot of doom, psychedelic, not so much stoner, but some stoner like that. And then a lot of death metal, like not as much thrash because I play it. So it's not exciting to me. It's something that I already do, you know. Not that I try to knock anyone. Obviously, I do like black thrash records.
Yeah.
Records that have like something different than what I am producing, like what I'm involved in. I don't know if you heard the new Blood Incantation. It's out of control.
Amazing. Like, I'm trying to get I'm trying to get somebody from the band on here because I think what they do is fucking amazing. Yeah.
So like, you know, that type of stuff keeps extreme music going.
Yeah.
It also makes, you know, ensures that things evolve. They don't stand still, and nothing is stagnant.
Yeah.
That type of record. And I find myself finding a record like that once every year or once every couple of years.
Yeah.
Something really special. So that's what I listen to. So I listen to new music. It's just not in the genre that I'm actually active in.
Yeah.
That
So
makes-
So if I had to ask you, for you personally, and this is a strictly subjective question, if you had to name your Mount Rushmore of all-time favorite musical acts, your top 4, who would they be?
of all Black Sabbath, Frank Zappa, John Coltrane. Who do I really, really, really like outside of those? Shit.
You came out of the gate fast with those first 3.
Yeah, man, because they're in my orbit all the time. They never leave me ever. I mean those because they represent all. I mean except Frank, but those 3 represent my musical upcoming. You know, like me me becoming a person in music.
Sure.
Um,
I heard Lemmy say once in an interview when somebody asked him about his influences, like your influences, they don't really change because of the stuff that resonates with you is always that first stuff that really lit your fuse,
Absolutely. And I mean, when I say Black Sabbath, in the same token, I have bands like Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple and like that's that era, right?
Are you strictly an Ozzy Sabbath guy, or is the Dio stuff okay too?
No. Funny. I mean, like, even though my first Sabbath record was Volume 4, the first tour that I was cognizant of that I couldn't attend was Heaven and Hell, and I bought that record too when it came out. So I remember that was like I had Volume 4. I'm like, there's more of this, right? So I go, and then right around that time, right when I start digging into Sabbath, Heaven and Hell drops, and I'm like, oh shit! And then they go on tour, but I'm only 12, and my dad's like, yeah, you're not going to go.
Yeah.
All right, bro.
That's good parenting.
And funny enough, a year later, I was able to go see my first show. But yeah, so let's boil it down to those 3. They pretty much represent me. Those 3 artists pretty much represent all the genres that I mean, I'm a huge jazz fan, and I mean, I love all kinds. I mean, I listen to a lot of soul.
Me too. That's a big one for me. Yeah.
Stuff
I was just going down that rabbit hole last night with the Temptations and Marvin Gaye and Otis Redding and all that kind of
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff. Like, it's just I mean, I mean, that's what I'm talking about. Like when we were young, I mean, at least I remember listen, my dad used to work with on an air base in Germany, because when he moved from Turkey to Germany, he didn't know how to speak German, but he was a translator in the Turkish army working with the American forces in Turkey. So he got a job on an air base. So I grew up on American Forces Network radio. And whatever was playing at the time,
right,
that was what was playing in my house.
Right.
So whether it was soul, funk, rock, whatever it was, whatever they played, that's what went in this brain. And then so that's why I never really made when I was a kid, like when you're a teenager, you're like, yeah, I'm freaking metal. That's all. But then I kind of would hear, I don't know, I would listen to Styx. I was like, great too.
I've talked about that. I'd hear that before. That it feels nice to be at a point in life when those dividing lines are and those walls are down, because you would almost be ostracized when I was a kid. If you were wearing the metal shirts and had the metal patches and you were caught listening to anything other than metal, man, you'd be the dreaded poser. You know what I mean? And you'd be drummed out of the metal community,
but
amongst your friends.
But at the same time, the same kids secretly listen to whatever.
Of course they did. Yeah. You don't realize that at the time. You just think about how detrimental it's going to be to your social standard, or your status.
Because I remember, in the mid '80s, there was a lot of new wave and stuff going on, and there were some great songs.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they came on, and I was like, "This is pretty cool." I would not go out and advertise it.
Right.
I would be like, yo,
Right.
I'm deep into the Cure or Depeche Mode, but
Right.
I was like, this is a pretty good song, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
sounds pretty good to me. And because that's the other difference, right? Like, I think all music, 60s, 70s, 80s, and even into the 90s, it required a certain amount of talent. It required certain amount of musicality.
Yeah.
It a certain amount of realness to it, especially things like when it got a little deeper, right? Now, you always had pop bands. I'm not talking about that, right? Like in the 70s, you had like Bay City Rollers, and nobody cares about that, right?
Right.
But then you would have a band like Fleetwood Mac. That's deep musicianship, bro.
Oh yeah.
That like, never mind that they had #1 chart hits on the billboards. Never mind that. That's deep musicianship.
Oh
By
yeah.
the time they got to that place, they were a touring band for many years with a deep history, and I mean, impeccable musicians.
Yeah.
So, and that kind of like, even like if you take hip hop, you know, if I just saw that Tribe Called Quest got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
They did. Yep.
And dude, that music is genius.
Very.
It's genius. And the amount of talent and the amount of like how original they were, like their voices, their delivery, everything. It's just next level shit.
Yeah.
So I feel like all these genres had required a certain amount of talent and honesty and emotion. That kind of is less and less and less, and that has nothing to do with me being an old fart thinking about, oh yeah, back in the day, because I find stuff like then I wouldn't find Blood Incantation and be like, awesome. That's it. Or if I hear a good pop tune, if it's good, I'll tell you it's good. You know, it don't matter. But the majority of the things that are popular now, or things that people are making a living off, it's not as, you don't need as much talent, I feel. It's a different type of talent, perhaps.
Yeah.
But it's not like, dude, like Tribe or Gangstar, all those DJs, those are musicians to me.
Oh yeah, every bit.
Like, they're musicians.
Yeah.
Just try doing that. You're not going to do that.
Yeah.
You're not gonna. There's not a chance in the world that you can approximate what DJ Premier is doing. There's no way.
Absolutely.
There's no way. So to me, that type of musicianship, that was required back then.
Right.
That was like, that's how you got admitted into the realm of like being. Now, when we first started in thrash, we took that punk attitude and said, we don't have to be super proficient, but we have to have, you know, energy, aggression, and some sort of command of our instruments.
Right.
And when we went to record Possessed by Fire, that was the first time we were in an environment where somebody said, all right, this is complete garbage. You're going to play this song 50 times.
Right.
And blew out my vocal cords, I remember. And like, because that's when we learned to become musicians. All of our contemporaries did that. Like, because we went there and we're like, you know, it was quite shaky what we were doing. But we learned how to become musicians, right?
Paying your dues. Yeah.
Paying our dues, and we came with that punk attitude because we're thrashers. To me, people forget. To me, thrash is punk / hardcore attitude with metal chops.
Right.
If you only have the metal chops and you don't have the punk attitude, it will show.
Yeah.
At some point.
And doing it the way you're doing it, I think, is essential too. Because I've heard a couple people on here like really criticize like the modern production, though, man. Because now we really expect perfection too. You know what I mean? We expect it almost. You know what I mean? So like we can't get by the like thinking like those old live rock albums. You used to hear if they hit a clunker or if there was a fuck up, and they'd leave it in there. You know.
So the one thing that I will say is, and when we got back together, we said we don't want to sound like 1988.
Right.
Because it's now you were talking about being a caricature of who you used to be. I don't want to be that guy.
Right.
I'd rather put out a record with the spirit of what I used to be, with that same spirit and the same energy, but I want it to sound like it's relevant in 2024. Yeah. So it's going to sound like a new record. It's going to sound like that. But you're absolutely right. And I don't mind when bands record a certain way where they're like, we want everything analog. That's totally cool. Whatever you want to do. I don't want that for our band. Our band doesn't want that for us.
Right.
Because it's not true. We have people. We have now. We have a new drummer and a new bass player. The drummer just turned 30. So why would I pretend that I'm going to record a record that sounds like Possessed by Fire when he wasn't even born then?
Right.
Stupid, right?
Yeah.
Makes no sense. We as a band gonna go ahead and put out a record that sounds relevant, that sounds like it was recorded today, but the energy is gonna be just as truthful as it used to be. That's our approach, and I think that's where you have you can have a nice compromise around that.
It seemed but it seemed like one trend that started to happen around COVID though was, and I know bands couldn't get out and tour and play live, but and they had to get their creative outlet out somewhere. But it almost felt like the world's attention span was dwindling, which we talked about earlier, and it almost seemed like with such an influx of music on the streaming platforms that people were almost afraid of being forgotten about. I got to stay relevant. I got to stay current. So we were seeing a lot of singles and a lot of EPs. But I feel like old school bands, still like to do the format of a long play. Like, does that still work for EXUMER?
Absolutely, we did.
Yeah, I love that.
One of the reasons why we haven't put anything out since 2019 is because of that. Like,
you want a fully realized album,
full record. I don't. That whole idea of I'm just going to drop 6 singles out on the internet until the record hits. 8 months after you drop your first single.
Yeah.
That doesn't work for us.
Yeah.
And that also doesn't work for like our A&R at Metal Blade. He's like, just put out the record.
Yeah.
Like when we put out the singles, it's first single, second single, third single, a month, same month as the third single drops, the record is released.
Yeah.
And you can buy the record on vinyl, you can buy it on CD, or you can stream it. I don't care. But you'll have all the formats that you prefer. But it's going to be 10 songs, maybe a cover, or 11 songs and a cover, whatever it is. It's a full-length record, and that's it. EPs were cool back in I don't know if you know this, but EPs served as an introduction to a band back then.
Right.
So because it wasn't as much of a financial risk for the label,
right?
Because you put out an EP,
it was almost like a sampler,
right? It takes if people like it, you put out the full length,
right?
Or as a bridge, but it worked back then because it was a valid format, and it kind of died. And then, but all the bands also actually put out full length records,
right?
You put out.
Well, because it seems like long gone are the days when we see like a 75-minute Metallica album. People just aren't paying attention like that anymore, which is sad.
to me, when as a thrash band, I try to stick to. We have a formula.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna bullshit anyone. Like that's what people are paying. Like when they buy an EXUMER record, no song is past 4 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
There's gonna be 10 tracks, a lot of fast material, some mid tempo, and that's the formula.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna put out I mean, average length of play is about 38 to 40 minutes.
Yeah.
In and out. That's it. Every record is the same. And that's what our fans expect from us. And I'm not gonna sit here and I'm gonna say, oh, we're just gonna, go into some King Crimson type of deal. And like that's why I love Blood Incantation, because that's where they went. That's how they evolved, and that's where they are right now.
Yeah.
They never ascribed to that formula. They always left some room to grow on their records, and it's part of the concept. Our concept is not that. So when a thrash band puts out a 75-minute long record, good for them. But I don't begrudge people when they're like, yeah, I'm not buying that.
Yeah,
because like that's a long record. And to me, the last relevant Metallica record for me is Justice.
Me too.
That's it. Then I sign off. Peace.
Yeah.
And when people ask, like, Ride the Lightning to this day is one of the best records ever made of that genre and of many genres.
Yeah.
But I remember very vividly Lars or somebody back in '83 saying, "Oh, we'll never play a ballad. We'll never write a ballad." And then Fade to Black is on Ride, and everybody's like, "Dude, they betrayed us," and da da da. And I was like, "Dude, this is fucking nothing, right? This is a cool song." But that's how us as fans viewed it. Like we're like
a betrayal. Yeah,
it's a betrayal. But I wasn't like begrudging it because it was just one song. But like now to sit down and write, you're not King Crimson. You're never gonna be. You're never gonna be Rush, because that's their concept. That's what those bands are.
Right.
That's why, have variety within your formula. There's nothing wrong with it, right? I can sit down and, say to Ray or the band, hey, let's write a song that's not as fast and a little more intricate here and there. Keep it to like 5 minutes, and it's just a different type of vibe to sprucing up the record. There's nothing wrong with that. If we still have nine tracks on there that are, ripping your face off, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not straining from what you're supposed to do. What you're supposed to do is deliver to your fans who've been buying your shit for the past almost 40 years what they want to listen to is what you're supposed to do.
Right. And by the way, 75 minutes would probably fit about 4 Agnostic Front albums. 75 minutes would be, if you gave them 75 minutes, they would probably give you 4 albums.
At least, yeah.
At least. Now, if I were to ask you, if I were to drop you onto a desert island and you can only take 1 album with you, what would the desert island album be?
Shit.
See, this is why I save the tough ones for close to the end.
Yeah. So it's gonna sound weird, but it's must be a record that I will find new things in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it would be A Love Supreme by John Coltrane.
Okay, yeah, and again, lots of people have answered this question on here, and lots of people have made the same point, and I think I would have to find that album myself if the question was posed to me, where you would find an album that could take you on the gamut of emotions. I wouldn't want to be on a desert island with just one style of music. All due respect to what you do, I wouldn't want to be out there with just an EXUMER album or just a Metallica album or just a death metal album.
Absolutely not. And that's the thing, right? It's easy for me to say Master of Reality because it's one of my favorite records.
Right.
But
But you'd be depressed as hell.
I'd be depressed after a while. So I would need to find something
Yeah.
that just kind of keeps me engaged. And I don't know if you're aware of, like, if you're into audiophile stuff, but I buy audiophile vinyl.
Yep.
And they reissued Love Supreme as a UHQR, which is a process.
Yep.
And it just reopened the whole thing. It just opened up the record again. And I'm like hearing things for the first, I know every note practically on that record. And I'm hearing things on there that are just insane. Just like, what? And that wasn't as audible, or it was audible, but it wasn't, I couldn't make it out as well as I'm listening to this UHQR. And it's just amazing that, you know, there is music out there that is so deep and so layered and so out there, you know. And again, in my heart of hearts, I'll always be a metal guy. I'll always be a hardcore
Me
guy.
too. Yeah.
But I'm just like at a point in my life, I already, like, I've internalized Ride the Light. I internalized Bounded by Blood. I internalized, those are records. That's my youth. That's what, you know.
Right.
I mean, I have multiple copies because I ran out. I tore the grooves of those records.
Yeah.
I minimized them to a speckle. Back then, I had to buy multiple copies of those records because there were no threads left on those.
Right. Right.
So I know everything about that. So now I just want to either discover stuff that is new, like to me new, like 1960s, 1950s jazz or whatever that I didn't know that existed, or soul or funk, or, you know, anything that I don't know about, you know. So, but in my heart of hearts, I'm still that guy. Like, you put on Bounded by Blood, I'll freaking sing every lyric. I'll know every riff. I know every
mosh around you want to mosh around your living room?
No, not a doubt. Like, even like when we're on tour, we'll listen to all kinds of shit, and then somebody will put on even Dio or whatever it is that we all grew up with.
Yeah.
Everybody sings every note. Like, that's just like, that's like breathing air or eating or something, you know. It's like, oh, I know what that is. Like,
I was telling my son that because we're going to the Carrier Dome, which is where the Syracuse University, and Metallica, Pantera, and Suicidal Tendencies are coming there next year. So me and my son are going together. And I told him the other day on the phone, I'm just like, you know, old school Metallica, I feel like was just playing in the background during every childhood memory. Every time I was getting drunk or getting into shenanigans with my friends or just at teenage parties, I feel like it was just always there, you know?
Yeah, that's the soundtrack.
It's ingrained.
It's ingrained. It's in there. So to me, like, yeah, that's as normal as, I don't know, me driving a car or whatever. It's effortless too. Like, I don't have to pretend or anything. I just put that, like, yeah, cool. Like,
now, of course, I would be remiss if I have you on here and I didn't end this by asking you, like, what can you tell us about new EXUMER? What are you allowed to divulge? I mean, is there a name for the album yet? Can you not divulge that? Did you have a timeline on, like, when you think it'll be out?
Yeah, so we're gonna try to hit the studio January, February, and then nowadays it takes about 6 months from the time you submit the audio master and the cover's all done, everything is done, but it takes about 6 months for production. So I would think either late summer, early fall is when it will be released.
Okay, so possibly sometime around this time next year for sure.
We've had the music written now for a good few months. Obviously there are a few tracks that we're still kind of like playing with, but pretty much everything is done. It's gonna have 10 songs, 10 new songs, 1 or 2 covers.
How How do you decide the covers? Is that like democratic? You guys pick a couple and put them in a hat or put them to a vote? How do you figure that out?
So the way we look at covers is we want to do something that, for instance, we did like on the Raging Tides, we did Pentagram and another song that was written by our producer. But we did Forever My Queen by Pentagram, and we decided on that song is because it's out of our genre and it is heavy as fuck. And we thought we could give it a different vibe that hasn't been done. So that's how we kind of look at it. Last record we did an Entombed song, death metal, not our genre.
Yeah.
And we did Scorpions, also not our genre. And so that's how we kind of look at covers. Things that have a different style, and we just want to give it a different vibe. That's interesting to us.
Yeah.
Opposed to, us going there and saying, oh, let's cover Slayer. What am I going to do with Slayer? Like I
remember I posed this question to the Flotsam and Jetsam guys because back on their the No Place for Disgrace album, they covered Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting by Elton John.
Right, and that's exactly what you're supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what you take something that's out of your genre, completely different, and you dress it up in a way where just give it a different vibe, and that's what we do as well.
Yeah,
I mean, playing an Exodus song doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right. So 2025, and is there a name for the album yet, or you're not sure?
Yeah, but I don't want to say.
Okay, fair enough. I understand that, and of course that's shit that can change too by the time the album is out. So you don't want to commit to something and then
It's committed.
Yeah,
but it is around the concept of what we discussed earlier about the Branch Davidians. So
well, there's certainly a lot. Well, I mean, I'm sure when you're trying to look for stuff, to draw from the creative well, obviously there's always tons of shit when you turn the news on or like look anywhere. I mean, it's endless material, right? The world's so fucked up.
Yeah. I mean, I just take stuff that I see that's interesting, but definitely think it has to emotionally resonate with me, and I have to have like a connection to it.
Yeah.
Like, I won't talk about stuff that doesn't move me in a way, right? So, and that's the same when we write the music. When we write the music, it has to move us. Yes, it's thrash, it's formulaic, whatever, but it still has to be real. It has to have honest emotion. It has to have something that we can attach ourselves to. And if it doesn't have that, never mind.
Yeah. Listen, Mem, I'm so glad you made time to do this, man. I really enjoyed this conversation, man. Obviously we're in touch now on the internet. Stay in touch, man. When it gets close to the album coming back out, or anytime really, I'd love to have you back on here and chop it up with you, man. This was a lot of fun, man. Really.
Same here, brother.
Yeah.
Take care. All right. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, my pleasure, man. Truly an honor, man. Thank you so much. Great talking to you, man. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, talk to you soon. Later. There he goes, folks. The great MEM V STEIN. You know him from EXUMER, German thrash metal fucking royalty, for fuck's sake, man. Possessed by Fire came out in 1986, their debut album, a seminal, yes, I'll use the word seminal, fucking album in the thrash metal world, man. The boys are still at it, man. Their last album was Hostile Defiance in 2019, which also was a fucking face melter, a fucking banger, an amazing fucking album that dealt with mental illness, as you heard Mem say there. New album coming out probably around this time in 2025, it sounds like, and it also sounds like it's going to be very topical and fucking amazing, which I wouldn't expect anything less from EXUMER, man. Thank you to the great MEM V STEIN for coming on here, man. What a pleasure. What a treat. What a conversation, man. All the way from Germany and now a fellow New Yorker. I got to fucking love that and salute the fucking shit out of that. Guy's a thrash metal fucking legend, man. And I salute him for all the great work, man, that EXUMER has given us, man. And it's great to see them still at it and still hitting it fucking hard like fucking champs. So I always fucking love that, man. Chalk one up for the over 50 fucking crowd, which I am a part of, man. These bands are still out there and still fucking delivering and throwing down and smoking bands half their age under the fucking table, man. I've witnessed it. Some of our great thrash and death metal bands and hardcore bands are still out there, man, and still doing it to a fucking high degree, man. And they should be saluted. And as I said, in past episodes, go out, support live music, check out your favorite bands, buy fucking merch, get out there and support these guys. And always great to have a legend on here. Of course, I am the son of a legend myself, so I know a little something about that, being Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. Let me give myself a look here, man, just to make sure at the end of this episode. Goddamn, I still got my front man looks. Thanks to Pops up there, man. And, of course, thanks to the product that does it all for me. My disclaimer, of course, is you might not be able to look this good, but you can probably look pretty damn good. The stuff isn't a fucking miracle worker, mind you. I've, of course, got the great Roth genes, so I get the great Roth quaff. But, hey, we can't all be that fucking lucky. So thank you so much to MEM STEIN, man, for coming on here, man. Great fucking episode. Want to remind you guys to like and follow us on Facebook and like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay tapped in. This, of course, is where all the cool kids come to chop it up with your boy, Reckless Rexx Ruger. No place else. Best conversations right fucking here. So stay tapped in, man. And like I always say when I end these things, remember to take it easy and keep it sleazy.